I'm David Norman. I'm the head dough puncher at Easy Tiger in Austin, Texas. Dough puncher is an old cowboy term. The cowboy that was the least talented at punching cattle got stuck on the chuck wagon punching the dough. Bread is just flour, water, salt, and some kind of yeast, whether it's wild yeast from a sourdough or if it's the commercial yeast that you buy. It's just those four elements. Bread does take time. Time is the other ingredient. But the cool thing about making bread at home is most of the time you're letting the bread do its own thing. You know, whether you have laundry to do, the kitchen to clean up, dinner to make, maybe you have a conference call you need to be on, you can be doing your bread in between all that. So you have an oven and some time on your hands. Start with a pizza stone, then a cast iron skillet with lava rocks or bolts to make steam, an automotive funnel, a bread peel, a dough scraper, a bowl large enough for your dough to double in size, a digital scale, and of course your sourdough starter. A sourdough starter is a culture of wild yeasts and beneficial bacteria used to ferment and leaven bread. The key to a healthy starter, no matter what method or recipe you use, is consistent feeding with consistent ratios of starter to flour to water. Feed it when you get it or within the first day. If you're ready to make your dough and bake bread, let it sit at room temperature for about 12 hours. To keep it for later, refrigerate after a couple hours. This is my sourdough starter. What I'm doing is kind of waking this up and feeding it and getting it ready. And then adding my flour. This is an unbleached all-purpose flour. And now I'm going to put in some water. The water's a little bit warm so that I warm this up because it's been in the fridge. We're feeding it and we want it to become nice and active for us. Squeezing that water and the starter into the flour. There, I've done my wake-up feed, and now I'm going to cover it and let it sit for about 12 hours. Then do the bulk feed in the recipe. This builds up the size of the starter so you have enough for the recipe and some to save for later baking. 3 to 8 hours later, you are ready to make your dough. So now I have my sourdough fed and woken up and ready and active to make my bread. I am going to make sure that I pull a little bit off and put it back in the fridge to keep it for the next bake. I love to add a little bit of rye flour and maybe some whole wheat or spelt because I like that flavor, but you certainly don't have to. This can be made with just unbleached all-purpose flour as well. Any great stone ground whole wheat is wonderful in this recipe, but again, especially with the sourdough starter, it's going to make a really great flavorful bread even just with your unbleached regular flour. So I've got my flours in there, blend them together a little bit. Then I'm going to add my salt. I like to use sea salt or kosher salt. Then I have my starter all woke up and ready to go. Pinch that into a few different pieces and put it right there on top. Now I'm just kind of added that water and I'm going to stir it together a little bit. And now I'm going to start to squeeze the dough. Keep squeezing until I have all this flour and starter worked into the water. So I'm going to squeeze just a tiny bit more water in there. All that water squeezed in there. And now I'm going to scrape it out. And now I'm going to start to stretch it a little bit and fold it. I'm just stretching and folding it. I don't need to do a whole lot of kneading, and that's what I'm looking for. It hangs together. It's not fully developed by any means, but it's kind of just pulling off the counter. The gluten that we're trying to develop in the dough kind of start to develop on its own. Just rough blob like that, put it right back in my trough. Our dough is rested for 15 minutes, and look, when we pull on it, it's stretchier than it was before already. I'm just going to stretch one side over the top like that. Stretch a little bit and fold it over the top. Then I just rotate it 90 degrees. And I'm gonna do the same thing in this direction. Just stretch and fold, push it in a little bit. And then stretch it and fold it like that. Great. Then I'm gonna turn it over. I'm just gonna pull it a little bit together like that into a ball. So put it back in your trough or your bowl. This time I'm gonna dust just a tiny bit of flour, not much. I'm not trying to add flour to it. Just gonna pull and stretch it a little bit and turn it, fold it over. Pull and stretch and fold it over. And I can rotate and do 2 more times. Pull and stretch. Pull and stretch. And now turn it back over. And now I can just pull it and stretch that surface nice and tight now. And it's getting much smoother, and that means that that gluten is developing. So that was our final fold. At this point, I'm going to want to cover it so it doesn't get a dry skin on it. Now this is where we do want to add a little bit of flour to our counter and make a couple loaves from here. So I'm going to divide it in half, make it into a ball like that. We're actually going to shape in a couple of steps. Pre-shape and then a final shape. We can get a better stretch to our gluten without tearing it. Gonna cover these up and let them sit about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm gonna do 2 different shapes because I have this nice oval basket. This is called a Brotform in German, or a Banneton. But if you don't have one of those, just take a nice tea towel and put it inside a metal bowl like that. So I'm gonna make one oblong and one round. And just turn it over, just press it out gently. I don't wanna press all the gas out, but just a little bit. So for my oblong one, I'm going to fold it away from me about 2/3 of the way and press it in. Then take the top edge and fold it back over there about 2/3 of the way and press it in. And now I'm going to take this top edge, stretch it a little bit over my thumb and down to meet the bottom edge and make my seam like that. So you just stretch it over and with the heel of my hand just seal along that seam. And then roll it a little bit back and forth. I have my batard shape, or my oblong shape. A little bit of flour in the basket so it comes out, and then plop, and it's ready to proof. For the round, I'm gonna just do the same thing, flatten it out a little bit. Then I'm gonna take a tab and pull it towards me, press it in, rotate it just a little bit, pull another tab over, like that. Just keep rotating, about 5 tabs I pull. And now you see my round shape is started, and I just cup my hands behind it and pull. And see how the surface is stretching a little bit? When I pull and I rotate just a little bit to make that round shape. Stretch that gluten, stretch that surface. I'm gonna turn that upside down, my tea towel lined bowl. Cover these up and let them sit and rise for their final rise. Our loaf has risen really nicely, nice and plump. So I'm going to turn it out on my peel. There we go. Now I'm going to take my serrated knife, score it. Now I'm ready, but I'm going to pre-steam my oven first, and then I'm going to slip this off onto the baking stone. So I've got my automotive funnel. I'm going to put it right inside the skillet with the rocks in it. And then I'm going to pour some water in there. Steam is going to help that loaf expand in the oven. And as soon as that water all goes down in there, then I can close that oven and keep that steam in the oven. Make sure my loaf slides on there. Now I'm going to open it up and just slide that out on there. Close it real quick. Ooh, it's looking great. Look at that. It smells really wonderful too. Wow. And we're just going to turn it over and tap it lightly on the bottom. Sounds nice and hollow. That's telling us that it's done. Well, I hope you enjoyed making bread with us today. Now comes my favorite part. Let's break bread together. This is our country loaf. So I hope you will share this with friends and family. Take a loaf to your neighbors. Oh, so good.